So we proceed in the program, and now we will have the first speaker online. So I hope that will also work, and that is Livio Provenzi, who is a psychologist and researcher at the University of Pavia in Italy. And Dr. Provenzi is also a young investigator awardee by Acta Pediatrica, but in 2020, and he's also on the steering group of the SCENE project, the multi-center project investigating care of newborn infants. So are you there, Livio? Yeah. Stina is nodding, so I trust the technique.
So to Hugo, a late question for you. If the preterm can express joy or hedonic feelings, how is that done?
Difficult question, but I think what you do, you have a reward center already at a very early stage, and if you, for example, give the baby something sugar, he looks happy, or she looks, doesn't he? I mean, you can see it. And I think face expressions actually was first studied by Darwin. It is a very good tool, for example, when you assess pain, etc., but also joy.
Thank you.
There's an expert in Denmark, Morten Kringelbach, and there are two stages. First, you are thinking of something good, for example, smell of food, and that's dopamine related. And then you eat the food and get the satisfaction. Then it's probably other neurohormones like endorphins. That's in adults, but I guess this mechanism may be developed at an early stage, I'm sure.
Yeah.
While we're waiting, Hugo, I have to. Do you remember at the Karolinska NIDCAP trial in the 90s, we collected urine from the babies in the two groups, and you told me that we should look at the catecholamines, and we looked at dopamine. That was the only one that we found differences, but I sort of misinterpreted it because the intervention group had higher concentration of dopamine in the urine compared to the control group, and I thought that was negative.
I don't think so. As I said, dopamine is...
Please talk.
No, I mean dopamine, but of course dopamine is involved in various processes in the brain, but dopamine stimulates the reward system.
Exactly.
But I'm not quite sure if that can be reflected in the blood.
It was in the urine.
Or in urine.
Yeah, no, I think we had some other methodological problems, so we didn't pursue. But I don't know, at the time, at the beginning of the 90s, maybe we should have dug further into this, because it was an interesting indication that the NIDCAP might actually increase the concentration of dopamine in the urine.
But I can add that when the newborn baby is born, I mean, there's enormous stress and there's enormous release of catecholamines, noradrenaline and adrenaline. And I think that actually makes you happy. I mean, this is a good stress to a certain extent. And you can see that the baby, I mean, I think you are familiar with Johnny Lind and Thomas Bergman's book about newborn babies, that they don't look distressed after a while, they look fairly happy.
Okay, Dr. Provenzi, we're very happy to see you here on our screen, and welcome to Lund. And we look very much forward to hear your lecture today. And so please start. We cannot hear you right now. Do you have your microphone? Now we hear you. Now we hear you.
Okay, good.
Now we hear you.
I'm sorry. Of course, thanks very much to Stina for inviting me, for all the committee of the conference. And thanks also to Agnes for her clear presentation of behavioral epigenetics. I'm sorry for some technical problems, but I think now it's resolved. Anyway, just tell me if everything goes wrong and I can take care of it. So I would like to start from this citation from a poet, a German poet. Most people lay aside their childhood just like a worn-out head. They forget it as if it were a phone number that no longer exists. But what are they really? So epigenetics really refer to, at least metaphorically, but also biologically, to the way in which our experiences are stored as memories in our body, in our biology. And so this question, what are they? We can say, what are we? And my answer is that we are a mess, from a developmental point of view, at least. I used to consider this definition of rugby as a good definition of human development and also as a good definition of parent-child interaction. Rugby as a qubit psych game, they deliberately chose a novel that is unpredictable ball to introduce chaos into the otherwise geometric clash of two ground-hungry bands. So if you have children or if you have been a child, so any one of us, you know that the relationship between a parent and the child is really messy. It's not linear as theory would like us to believe. And if you want to have another example of this messiness, I have a video clip for you. I hope that the sound works.
Lasai, you're not a single lady, buddy. No, yeah you are. Yeah you are. You're a single lady. Oh! Sorry. Sorry. Look, buddy, I was just kidding. I was just kidding. You can do it. Buddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, buddy. You're a single lady, okay? Okay? Here we go. If you like it and you did a better ring on it. Sorry.
Did that hurt your feelings? You can be a single lady if you want, okay?
I'm a horrible father.
Do you want to be a single lady?
Okay, did you hear the sound? Were you able to listen to the sound? Yes, okay, good.
Yes, we could hear you.
Okay, also from the video, right?
Yes, we heard everything.
Okay.
We enjoyed it very much.
Yes, I just showed to you, this is a video I found on the web. I don't know this family, but I like it because it tells us a lot about how family dynamics work. So a very simple and we can say not relevant event like a comment from the father, a joke, may really provoke a change in all the family as a system. And this is just something that happens in few seconds during a car drive. So you may think about how something that changed the developmental expectations of parents may change family dynamics. For example, when a child is born preterm. And second by second, you had an example in this video. Second by second, we create meanings about our interactions, about our relationships, about what we are and what the others are for us. In this family, every single member is creating a different meaning about themselves and the others. And these contribute to the phenotype that very brilliantly Agnes showed to us using the epigenetic landscape metaphor. I'm happy not to have this picture in my slides because we are going to have some overlap, but this is not going to happen for that picture. I just have this one that tells you that moment by moment, we are the product, the dynamic product of environment, behavior, brain activity, physiology, genetics, and also epigenetics, of course. So you can really see that we are the result of a messy process. So the question is that somewhere all this messiness should leave a footprint. And today we talk about epigenetic footprints. But talking about footprints, and since we are in a hybrid event, so I can travel wherever I want very easily, I just want to take you in the US, in the White Sands National Park, New Mexico. This is a place where 2 years ago, archaeologists, they found the very first evidence of a family moving together, and this was an evidence from the Pleistocene. So a mother moving together, here you see the footprints, a mother walking together with the baby, probably holding the baby and then putting the baby on the ground just to adjust during the travel. So we can say that from the very beginning of our history, what we are is living beings that take care of others. And this applies to us as parents, and this applies to us as physicians, as nurses, as psychologists. So everyone today here connected, we can say that it is in our inborn nature to take care of others. And other examples of the fact that we are born to be wild, born to care for others, come from imitation research. Here you see examples from a baby macaque and a baby newborn. You may know these examples. You see that from the very first moments of life, we are super sensitive to facial signals from adults. And of course, I do a lot of research with the stiff face procedure. You may know it. We ask the mothers to interact with the baby for 2 minutes, and they interact normally as they do at home. And then at a certain moment, we ask the mother to interrupt any communication. So to go back to the child, looking at the child with a still face expression, no signals, no touch. And you see that the baby immediately recognizes that something is happening. We have gaze avoidance, but the very first attempt is trying to re-engage the mother with positive signals like smiling, pointing in the environment, because the baby knows that this usually works. And then when the wires, when the social connection is not repaired immediately, the child can face social emotional stress, which is increasing. She may lose the control of the body, she may scream, and only when they reconnect, they are able to quite easily re-engage and reestablish a normal, let's say, calm interaction. So not only we are born to be wild, but we are also very sensitive when these social wires are interrupted. So what happens when our connections are challenged and broken? And this is exactly, as Agnes already said, the example of the NICU environment. I'm not losing time to talk about this because you know this environment better than me. I just want to say something about the parents, because I'm going to talk about the biology of babies, but even for parents in ICU may be stressful, you know it. Some years ago, we asked parents of babies hospitalized in the NICU to draw their experience, not just to tell us with interviews, but to create drawings. And this is the drawing from a mother who had 2 twins hospitalized in the NICU. And you see that she draws fireworks for the discovery of being pregnant, and then the pregnancy as a calm sea, and then a danger signal for birth, preterm birth, and then the discharge with 2 gifts like the 2 twins. I just want to highlight that there is no drawing for the NICU staying. And if there are psychologists there, you may know that the missing pieces are sometimes the most important ones. But we also ask fathers to do the same. And this is the drawing of the father of the same kids. So you see how different can be the meaning making and the experiences of mothers and fathers of the same infants in the same NICU. And these are other examples from other families. This is a paper we just published last year. And of course, NICU is not only stressful for parents, but as you know, for babies. We have different examples of how NICU stress can affect neuroendocrine dysregulation, for example, cortisol activity, neurobehavioral deficits, behavioral problems, functional and structural brain development, but also, as it is anticipated during this morning, even developmental care may have opposite effects on the same systems: endocrine attunement, neurobehavioral stability, behavioral regulation, brain growth. So our question was how the early NICU experiences, for bad and for good, get under the skin and contribute to program the long-term developmental trajectories of preterm babies. And this is why we started to chase the epigenetic footprints of early experiences. And since Agnes already told you a lot about epigenetic in a very precise and clear way, I don't want to lose time about that. I just want to say that another way to understand how epigenetic works is to look what is happening right now with elephants in some African communities. A lot of elephants are born without tusks or with very short tusks. And this is a response to the environment that for them is poaching pressure. So in some cases, we are the environment, as we are, for example, with developmental care from preterm babies. But these elephants clearly show to us that when we are the environment, we can really shape the epigenetic regulation of other living beings. And we are doing this with elephants, but we are doing this also with preterm babies. I'm going to show you something, but of course, Rosario Montirosso is going to add more about that, as the studies that I'm going to present to you in a few slides, I did this study in his lab. This example already has been presented by Agnes, so I don't want to lose too much time. This is another very common metaphor to refer to epigenetics. So you can consider the DNA as a music draft, which has specific notes, and then epigenetics as the way you give interpretation of this music draft by accelerating, by decelerating, by adding some accent and giving a personal interpretation of the same music. As Agnes said, again, I'm saying Agnes a lot of time, I'm sorry, but we focused on SSC6A4 gene, which is the gene encoding for serotonin transporter. And this has been a gene that has been associated with many different, with epigenetic regulation by many different environmental exposures. Some examples follow here. For example, maternal depression during pregnancy, or maltreatment and abuse, low socioeconomic conditions, and even acute traumatic experiences like being exposed, like pregnant women exposed to traumatic events like the terroristic attack in New York. These are just some examples of the findings that we obtained from our cohort of preterm babies. More can be probably added by Rosario later on during the afternoon. We found that at birth, preterm babies compared to full-term babies, they didn't show different levels of DNA methylation of the SSC6A4 gene. But what was significant was an association between the amount of pain the preterm babies were exposed to during an ICU stay and specific outcomes from 3 months. Here you see temperament assessment. So at 3 months, higher pain was linked with higher methylation, with in turn, which was associated with lower duration of orienting, so an attention metric, and a social approach, but also long-term outcomes. For example, brain development at discharge, but also long-term outcomes at 4 years of age, including emotional regulation during an observational task in our lab. So you can see that something that happens very early in life, and again, the theory of the first 1,000 days is very helpful here, like painful exposures in preterm babies may really start a process of change or a process of biological learning that we can see in epigenetic changes that is linked with short and long-term outcomes in the behavioral development of these infants. During the last years, we also started to study how the pandemic-related stress was affecting during the first 1,000 days the health of mothers and babies who were living during this unprecedented emergence. that we are facing still today. So we started a multicentric project that involved 10 neonatal units in northern Italy. This was the very initial center of the pandemic spread in Italy and in Europe in the initial part of the 2020. And we collected buccal cells and saliva from mothers and infants at birth to have information on DNA methylation, especially on SEC64 gene. And then we tracked maternal health and infant development from birth to 12 months using self-report questionnaires and observational measures collected online. To date, we have data analyzed until 3 months, and this is what I'm going to present you today. First of all, you remember that I said that there was no difference in methylation between preterm and full-term infants at birth. And again, here we have something similar on the behavioral side. So there was no difference in the extent of maternal depression and anxiety between mothers who were exposed to the virus directly. So there was positive or not during pregnancy. But what we found was that the amount of emotional stress lived by mothers during pregnancy was significantly and directly correlated with depression and anxiety at birth and during the first 3 months in our cohort of 300 mothers. Of course, there are also some positive outcomes. At the very beginning of my presentation, I told to you that we are born to be wild and that social interactions are really important for us. And here you can see that mothers who gave birth of their infants in units in which home visiting sessions were not interrupted during the lockdown period, they didn't show elevations in parenting stress, depression, and anxiety at 3 months. And this is very important because by investing in very simple interventions like home visiting, which is not so common, at least in our country, we can really protect the well-being and the health of mothers and probably also of infants. And what about infants during the pandemic? We saw a domino effect. Here you see that prenatal COVID-related maternal stress and reduced maternal social support experienced by women during pregnancy, during the pandemic, both they were linked with the level of maternal anxiety at birth, which in turn associated with increased maternal parenting stress and lower feelings of mother to infant bonding at 3 months, which in the end, as a cascade effect, were associated with difficulties in infant temperament at 3 months age. So you see that there is, again, like with preterm babies, a kind of movie that starts very early in life and sets the stage for altered behavioral development. And again, we can ask ourselves, are epigenetic mechanisms involved some ways in this process? And this is what we started to understand. Here you see that in the central image, that increased pandemic-related prenatal stress in women was linked with increased methylation of the SEC64 in the infant, not in the mother. And this is very interesting. We can discuss about that later in the question, if we have time for questions. And in turn, increased methylation of the SSC64 methylation in the babies was linked with reduced temperament score in the infant. So contributing to have a mechanism that may explain how prenatal stress, even during a pandemic, may increase the risk of altered behavioral development in babies. So going to concluding, where is chasing footprints leading us? I have a set of implications. First of all, our idea of adapting. This is something that has been already discussed this morning in some ways. We tend to study the negative impact of adverse experiences because we want to protect children. But we also should know that in many animals, there are many adaptive traits that emerge from adverse experiences. Of course, for example, many birds, they are able to be faster in responding to predators. They have better spatial memory. They are more attractive for females. They have better capacity to retrieve food, especially in challenging environments. And they have increased capacity for social learning from peers. And these are kind of adaptive effects that emerge in animals who are exposed to early adversity in life. So this should tell us something about our idea of adaptation. So I think about these epigenetic changes not just as something bad, because epigenetics, has been explained before, is the way in which our DNA works on a regular basis. But I think about these changes as biological learning. So the real question is, how will these biological learnings will fit with the future environment of our children? Or the same question made from our clinical perspective, how can we develop an environment which is capable of capitalizing from early biological learnings and allow each individual to develop at best? And from this perspective, I need also to highlight that in a very recent study published by a German group, we also have a finding related to the epigenetic effects of skin-to-skin contact. And we saw, thanks to this group, that the very early initiation of skin-to-skin contact between parent and infants may promote opposite patterns of SSC6A4 methylation and also NR3C1, which is the gene encoding for cortisol receptors. So we start to have a proof of concept to conceptualize skin-to-skin and early developmental care as an epigenetic protective intervention. We also have implications for policies. You know that in 2009, James Heckman and his group, they published this paper suggesting that investing very early in life in early family-centered intervention is the best way to have a return for healthcare systems, not only for have a return for families and children. So again, focusing our interventions ultra early, as we say in this conference, is not really something useful from a clinical perspective, but also something that should be valuable for policymakers. Then we have implications for the scientific community. During the last years, we have saw how far we are as scientists from the citizens. The difficulties with the vaccination campaign is really in front of our faces. So I think that we need to improve the way we do science and the way we communicate science. And just few key actions that I would suggest today: improving communication skills to naive readers and citizens, educating citizens to science methods, not only delivering our findings, and engaging citizens and patients actively in research programming, not just as subjects. Finally, I think that if there is something that we can learn from these studies on epigenetics is that we are very fragile. I mean, everything that happens around us, in the bad or in the good, can change our biology and can affect our phenotype. So I think that we should change the way we face adverse experiences and clinical issues, not just using the metaphor of war, which is going to create more separation, but focusing and starting our intervention from our fragile nature and from our social nature, because only investing in reparation actions can really take care of fragility. So I conclude here my presentation. I have a lot of people I'm thankful to. Here there is a list that maybe is not complete. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening to me.
Thank you very much for this excellent lecture.
Thanks for the flowers.
We send these flowers to you to look at least. And you will also get a voucher for next year's meeting. So you're very, very welcome. Yeah.
You can send the flowers as a PDF.
Yeah, I will try. Yes. Okay. Do we have any questions online already, or is there any question from the audience? No one online yet. So can I ask a question about how, because I think the last slide you show is a bit scary too, that we don't need very much, and I thought of your interest in the SCENE project. Are you incorporating this kind of information or research into the SCENE project as well?
Oh, well, I didn't want to scare. No, what do you mean with scary? Which was this one?
No, because you can wonder how easy is it to get these kind of epigenetic changes that may affect our life. You took example of a pandemic. We now have a terrible war in Europe with lots of pregnant women giving birth and fleeing, for example. How much? When does this mechanism start, and how can we reverse them?
Yes, as okay, Agnes already said. I don't know how many times I said Agnes. Anyway, I will send the voucher to her. But she already said that methylation can be reversed, and of course we have many examples with animal models. It's more difficult to do that in humans. I really would like to have a study that, and we are trying to launch such a study in these years in my lab, a study in which we can compare the effect in the same cohort, the effects of pain exposure and skin to skin, and also post-discharge family-centered intervention, not only on behavioral outcomes, but also on epigenetic mechanisms. I think that there is a big potential of human-led interventions like parent-led interventions, developmental care, to have kind of epigenetic protective effects. And we have information from these in animal rats, for example, when they use cross-fostering and they cross-foster animals who are born from mothers with low quality of care and who are raised by mothers with high quality of care, they saw a completely reverse in the pattern of methylation. So we can expect something similar in humans. I think it's not really scary, but I think it's something that should tell us something. So we should start to develop new interventions, believing that we can really make a difference investing in human potential. So investing, for example, in engaging parents, engaging them actively in the NICU. And nowadays, there are a lot of differences between many different NICUs. So in the amount and in the quality of parent engagement, not only in a single country, but all over the world. So I think we have a lot to do, and this gives us a rationale to believe that when we engage parents, we are really doing something very protective for infants' biology, not only engaging parents because it's good for families. And for the scene, yes, I am a member of the scene, of the steering group of the scene. We have many projects going on. We don't have still a project on epigenetic markers, but I think it will be very, very nice if we find a way to put together these resources, since with the scene we have a very big network of NICUs and we can really catch individual differences in the quality of care in different NICUs, at least in Europe.
Thank you very much for this
Do we have time for a question?
Yes, we have lots of time, so it's
Yes. There are two questions. The first one, what would be a main message for parents in the NICU regarding the fragility and mess you have mentioned as a characteristic the baby's developmental path?
Yes, I don't know. I don't work in a NICU. Okay, this is the premise of my response. I work in a hospital and we take care of the follow-up of preterm babies, so from discharge to 24 months. And so I saw many infants with disability that were previous preterm babies. And I mean, for my clinical practice with these families, having in mind that we are a mess, that we are fragile, that it means that I don't have to ask parents to be perfect, to follow an ideal image of parenting, of taking care of the baby, but just to focus on what they are, what they have now. Even, for example, when we have a baby with a cerebral palsy, there is a lot of things we can do. We can help the parents to work and to imagine what happens inside of the mind of this baby, which may be very difficult for us as clinicians. But I think that a parent needs to have, faith and to have an idea to play with the mind of the baby independently of the clinical condition. So this idea of messiness provides me with the potentials of working with parents in many different ways with a creative approach, and not just having a single idea of what good parenting should be. And I think also give a relief to parents that they shouldn't feel, guilty too much. They can, of course, if they want for some time, but they shouldn't feel guilty if something goes wrong. There is always a possibility to take care, to repair, to take care of what is not good at the moment. So I think there is a lot that we can teach to ourselves and share with parents starting from this point.
Thank you. We have one question from the auditorium, also Björn Westrup.
Just a comment. Thank you, Livio. I don't know where the camera is. I would just like to mention that in the big WHO immediate KMC trial, there is a follow-up part, which probably will be published next year, I think, 24 months follow-up. Because, of course, the experience of immediate and continuous KMC, I would say continuous, because in that study, both arms actually got very large amount of skin to skin after stabilization, even the control babies did. So that could give us some more information if the first 3 days of life would be a critical period or not. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really curious to see these findings. Yes, I think we need this kind of research on the positive side, on the protective side. We focus too much on adversities.
There is one more question from the digital audience. Thank you, Livio, for a great talk. I'm interested in how you assessed infant temperament. I read your paper from 2021. Many thanks from Vibeke Jonas.
Ciao, Vibi. And well, we both in the preterm baby project and in the pandemic one, we measured temperament using the infant behavior questionnaire revised, which is a questionnaire filled in by the mothers and provides a lot of scales on different aspects of temperament, from regulatory rhythms to positive affectivity, stress regulation, reaction to different kind of sensory stimulations. But we are also going to have information on temperament and behavioral regulation at 12 months using a new behavioral observation that we did on remote that we are testing right now. But by now we only have self-report by the mothers, which is not always the best option, but during the pandemic, it was the best we could do.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? No, I cannot see anyone raising their hands. So with that, I would like to thank you so much for this excellent and very, very interesting lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No.